Hello, people. Welcome back. Hopefully, we can get this book finished. I was just looking at the chapters there, and we're nearly there. We're nearly there, guys. I had to have a wee break there and get a wee coffee. So I was looking at the contents, guys. So all the purple is what we've already read, and we just read about the keening. The spirits are next, and as you can see there's probably about another 30 chapters maybe. But you've been seeing there that the chapters can be very short, so we might be able to finish it tonight, guys. I'm hoping so, because I think I'm running out of StreamYard hours and I need to set up the OBS and all that again. So hopefully I can do this tonight. Anyway, right, let's get back to it. So we were at spirits, guys. Spirits. James Bonwick, Irish Druids and Old Irish Religions, 1894. With so imaginative and ignorant a people, a supposed spiritual set of creatures played a great part in daily life, and those ancient ideas are not entirely driven off by the march of the schoolmaster. Scotland, with its centuries of parish schools, retained many superstitions to a very late date, as the clergyman of Kirkmichael, Perthshire, declared he found there in 1795. Some spirits answered to those described by Plato as between God and man are the daemons, or spirits, who are always near us, though commonly invisible to us and know our thoughts. The Reverend R. Kirk left on record in 1691 that the very devils conjured in any country do answer to the language of the place, and yet he ascertained that when the Celt left his northern home, they lost power over him, as they were daemons loci. In some cases, they were ghouls feeding on human flesh, causing the man or woman gradually to waste away, unless exorcism was practiced in time. Would that men have found as much comfort in the belief of good spirits as they have suffered fears from the belief in the evil ones. There is still, alas, in this world, a more thought of a jealous and avenging deity than of one benevolent and paternal. Subterranean spirits might dwell in the burning mountains or occupy themselves in mining and the storing of treasure. Many Irish legends relate to such. They may appear as Deum She, dressed in green, with a mischievous intent. Sounds like the leprechauns, eh? Others presented themselves restlessly moving over water. Not a few sought amusement by destroying at night what parts of a church had been constructed in the day. Hence the need, in certain cases, to bury alive a man, woman, or child under the foundations. Tradition says that St. Columba thus tormented, buried St. Oran at his own request under the monastery of Iona. Fukas, I've never heard of this word, Phookas. Fukas. The Fukas or Pukas have left some marks in Ireland. There is a Castle Puka or Carrig a Puka, Cork, and a Pook Cavern in Wicklow, Co. Pope calls it a dusky, melancholy sprite, as ever sullied the fair face of night. Fukas have been seen running from hill to hill. Their shapes vary like the buttocks of the Hebrides. So it must be another kind of spirit here. Fukas. The leprechaun. So the leprechaun, the clericoon or leprechaun, is a mischievous old fellow dressed in a green coat but without brogues. That Scottish elf who coughs with swollen lips the ruby wine, draining the cellar with as free a hand, and as if it were his purse, which ne'er lacked coin. So it never lacked coin, his purse. The Scottish elf, or that sottish elf, sottish. So it's not saying Scottish, that sottish elf, who quaffs with swollen lips with ruby wine, draining the cellar with as free a hand as if it were his purse, with ne'er lacked coin. The Morrigan. In the religious beliefs of the pagan Irish by O'Brien Crow is a reference to the Morrigan, which once appeared in the shape of a bird, addressing the famous bull donned in dark, mysterious language. On another occasion, she appears to Ku in the form of a beautiful lady and tells him she is in love with him and has brought him her gems and her cattle. Ku said he had something else than love to attend to at that time. She said when he would next engage in single combat, she would, in the shape of a serpent, coil herself around his feet and hold him fast for his adversary. Oh, she didn't like getting turned down there. The Banshee, or the mysterious Banshee, much has been said and sung. She is often attached to certain families or even septs and given notices of coming calamities. She is the Ben Seed of Irish and Cavereth or Tylothod of Welsh, whom it is fatal to meet or to listen to her shrieks. As an old woman, she is white or house fairy. In this sense, she is said to draw nigh at the time of death and bear the soul to its fairy home. The White Lady of Avenel was a banshee. There's a White Lady story near where I work, in the Corstorphine area. There's actually a pub named after it, the White Lady, after the myth in the area. There is a curious old Irish legend about a lady whose father shut her up in a tower on Tory Isle with 12 matrons in charge who were kept her from the sight of man. All went well till McKinley consulted the Banshee of the mountain. Telling him to dress in women's garments, she ferried him to an island, asking shelter for a noble lady chased by an enemy. Landing the young man, she threw the dozen guardians into a druidic sleep and left the couple together a while, afterwards rowing the man ashore. Serious results ensued. See, these are just little tasters, guys, of stories or myths. And if you want more, it's just something like to reach a beginning, a base to search from. And there's not whole massive chapters about the Banshee. It's just giving you little bits. Fairies. So fairies are more pronounced in Irish than in English traditions. They are fairly represented in the west of Scotland, in Wales, Lancashire, and Cornwall, parts frequented by Irish friends and foes. They are Sides, Saig, Sith, Dwayne Matha, or good people. Fairsig of the supernatural world are Irish forms of the Welsh Tylwyth Teg, the Fair family, Swedish Nissen, Danish Damhest, Polish Rotary, the Russian Domovoy, English Puck, Elf, Fay, or Robin Goodfellow, Cornish Pixie, Burmese Nats, Breton Corrigan, or Coral, Scotch Brownie, Norwegian Trolls or Nis, Oriental Jinn, Jewish Shedem, Italian Fata, Greek Parse or Eumenindes. That which is neither ill nor well, the which belongs not to heaven or hell. Because many are represented as little men, writers have fancied the idea was but a tradition of pre-existing races, small in stature, who were improved off by visitors or marauders of larger growth. Dwarfs or doozies are thought in Brittany to haunt the dolmens or ancient graves, though in some manner they are known as the ghosts of the Druids. Certainly Africa bears evidence of widespread pygmy race. There are Dokos of South Abyssinia, a Bongo of West Africa, Aka of Central Africa, Batu living in trees like monkeys, and others in Congo, etc. So remember, like I said, guys, it's 1894, so he's saying here there's people living in trees like monkeys. Batu. The fairies are so associated with mankind at present, though they may carry off their children, replacing them with changelings. Remember that song I was talking about? And it was by the poet, Yeats. And it's called The Stolen Child. And it reminds me of these fairies. The fairies are associated with mankind at present, though they may carry off their children, replacing them with changelings. The mannequins may be white, brown, grey, or yellow. Some are small enough to sit in the ears of corn, while others fly about on magic horses. It is sad to know that these little people indulge in faction fights and pinch those who dance with them. Giant figure less often. The Book of Leinster tells of giant Luther with 14 heads wooing Gobble, whose charms extended over 50 cubits. What do they mean by our charms? Is that the cup size? Occasionally, these little people are not content with stealing babies, but would run off with men, as Nia of the golden hair did with the Irish Fenian warrior. The busy Maccaset, who worked underground, were more worthy of offerings than the Capit, whose caused eclipses by catching hold of the moon. It is discreet always to speak well of fairies, as they listen without being seen. Their females look after men, as their males look after women. They have kings and queens. Oberon, or Elberic, was a king, and Titania a queen. The Irish say that Don, the Milesian leader, drowned in a storm raised by the Tuaths, became a king of the Fays. Innis Mananaean, now Isle of Man, was so called from Mananan, an ancient chief transformed to a royal side. Mab, daughter of King Ikude, Fedlec, became queen of the fairies, being more than immortalized in Spenser's Fairy Queen. Another king of the fairies was the Tuath Fionbar. The Welsh fairy king was Gw ab Nud. As these spirits of air, earth, and water are numerous, it is a comfort to learn from the Talmud that while the bad ones are exactly 7,400,000, 5,926, the good ones number in the rougher estimate 1 billion. Is that 1 billion? What? The Talmud. As these spirits of air, earth, and water are numerous, it is a comfort to learn from the Talmud. So they've got a number for these fairies in the Talmud? The hell? Is there something I'm missing here? Did you hear that? Did you see it? Is there anyone in chat? Anyone in chat? Right. That's cool. I was going to say, did you hear this, guys? I don't know if that is 1 billion. That could be something like 1 trillion. Black fairies are not conspicuous unless in the mines. The Maoris of New Zealand assure us that their merry little fays are not of their dark colour, but fair like Englishmen. They love the hills of Waikato. A chief, frightened of them, took off his ornaments and gave them away. As soon as they finished their song, as he told the tale, they took the shadows of the Maoris' earrings and handed them about from one to another. As all know, the fairies or Peris are suffered from some misconduct in happier climes. Christian tradition holds to their final redemption. Irish fairies are thus mourned for by D.F. McCarthy. Ah, the pleasant time hath vanished, ere our wretched doubtings banished. All the graceful spirit people, children of the earth and sea, whom in days now dim and olden, when the world was fresh and golden, every mortal could behold in haunted wrath and towering tree, they have vanished, they are banished. Ah, how sad the loss of thee. Some were not so pleasant. While the Fuka horse holds his frantic course o'er wood and mountain fall, and the banshees croon a rhythmic rhyme from the crumbling ivied wall. As elsewhere noted, the Irish fairies are intimately associated with the druidical, ghostly, or magical Tuaths. When these were conquered by the Milesians, they betook themselves to the hills. Arid survived as fairies. The good people have been also thought to be druidesses. The English lubber fiend of Milton is doubtless the Irish Lurrigadan. So the sigh. The sigh, the sea, the she, or the Seath, or Sith, were of many varieties. As the Farshi was the man of the seeds, so was the Banshee the woman of the Sids. They were magical deceivers. They built fine halls and interfered in battles. Behold the seed before your eyes. It is manifest to you that it is a king's mansion, which was built by the firm Dagda. It was a wonder, a court, an admirable hill. They might have been defied mortals. Lug Mac Ethland had been 1,000 years a seed. He would sometimes sojourn a while on earth. Once he had a son by the fair Decture, and thus Cuchulainn became a hero. Carolan, the Irish bard, celebrates the fairy hills of Sith Beag and Sith Moor in Leitrim. Troops of them on horses followed their King Don and Queen Clydna or Clena. The Dane She or men of peace referred to in the Book of Arma were peevish rather than malevolent, dressing in green. They resented the appearance of human beings in green. They who wanted to see them must select Hallow Eve, walk round their hill 9 times, when a door would open, revealing the dancing throng. It is dangerous to accept their invitation to come in for a dance, as the tripper never returns again to his home. Fairy-inspired bards were liable to be spirited away by their muse, the Lenan Sai. If she helped them in the composition, they were bound to follow her through eternity. Were it not better thou shouldst dwell a while with a young maiden of golden locks, than the country should be laughing at thy doggerel rhyme? The mermaids or sea fairies were Marudu or Maro. Their hair and teeth were green. We have no record of their pugnacious qualities, as of the denizens of land. Ailn, whose lay is in Old Irish, lamenting the death of her husband and 2 sons, knew by the mighty fairy host that were in conflict over the dun, fighting each other, that evil would befall her 3 beloved. They did not play coal seed or fairy music. The word seed is said to be the Celtic root for a blast of wind. The whirlwind was certainly called a fairy wind. There is a seed tum on the Boyne, a seed Neanta of Roscommon, seed Maida near Tuam, seed Ada Rood, a hill of Donegal. There are 70 Irish townships beginning with she. Ireland abounds with localities having fairy associations. Joyce gives many. Finn and his Fenians are in Slabe na Man Fionn, the mountains of the fair-haired women. Race Seath, the Fenian fortress, is in Antrim. The fairies' wood is in Sligo. There are the Shiggies, the fairy hills in Donegal, the Shions, the fairy mounds, the haunted hills, the Shian, the Sheena, the Shane, the Knockna, Luracame, the hills of the Cluricane. In Lough Corrib, the leprechauns were said to have been provided with ground meal for supper by hospitable neighbours. There was a Banshee Palace in South Munster and another in a rock near Mallow. The Banshee Abel had a fine palace in a rock by Killaloe. It was she who threw her cloak around the hero O'Hartigan at the Battle of Clontarf, so rendering him invisible. Sounds like Lord of the Rings, eh? The cloak of invisibility. In fact, Joyce is led to exclaim, "Some parts of Connaught must have been more thickly populated with fairies than with men." Were the fairies in Ireland of great antiquity? One has written of the fancy that the tales of mortals abiding with the fays in their palaces are founded on the tender preferences shown by the Druidic priestesses of old to favourite worshippers of the Celtic divinities. N. O'Kearney is of opinion that our fairy traditions are relics of paganism. Kennedy says, in borrowing these fictions from their heathen predecessors, the Christian storytellers did not take much trouble to correct their laxity on the subject of moral obligations. Andrew Lang sees that the lower mythology, the elemental beliefs of a people, do service beneath a thin covering of Christian uniformity. At least we may admit with Professor Stokes that much of the narrative element in the classic epics is to be found in a popular or childish form in primitive fairy tales. How you doing, Ulick? Sleeve. Right, guys, it's pronounced sleeve. Ulick McKee is an Irishman who's corrected me. He'll know because these areas he's probably heard said with the Irish tongue. So, sleeve. What have I been saying? Slid or something, or slid? Sleeve. Cool, mate. Thank you for that correction. Right, ghosts. Ghosts. Among the early and latter superstitions, ghosts are very prominent. As so many ghost stories rest upon tradition, it is well to bear in mind that the author of the Golden Bough says the superstitious beliefs and practices which have been handed down by word of mouth are generally of a far more archaic type than the religious depicted in the most ancient literature of the Aryan race. It is not easy to laugh at Irish peasants for ghost yarns when all nations, from the remotest antiquity, accepted them, and philosophers like Dr. Johnson, preachers like John Wesley, reformers like Luther, poets like Dante and Tasso recognized such spirits. Some, like an author in 1729, may doubt souls returning from heaven. Nor do I know, said he, whether it would be worth their shifting hell and coming back to this world in the wandering condition those things called ghosts are understood to be. Others may exclaim, with Dr. Johnson, all argument is against it, but all belief is for it. Thyreus, the Jesuit, thinks that they are but souls from purgatory seeking rest. Earberg considered, it is against no scripture that souls should come from Hades. Henry Martin, the French Celtic scholar, said, the intercourse between earth and heaven is a belief strongly accredited among the bards. Gladstone recognizes that the recent Greek dead are wanderers in the shades without fixed doom or occupation. Homer's Odyssey has this reference. But swarms of spectres rose from the deepest hell, with bloodless visage and with hideous yell. They scream, they shriek, and groans and dismal sounds stun my sacred ears and pierce hell's utmost bounds. Virgil shows to Aeneas his father and kisses. Then thrice around his neck his arms he threw, and thrice the flitting shadow slipped away, like wind or empty dreams that fly the day. Suetonius tells us that the ghost of Caligula walked in Lavinia's garden where his body was buried until the house was burnt down. Ecclesiastes speaks of Samuel thus, after his death, he prophesied and showed the king his end. In the archives of the Royal Society is a MS paper read November the 16th, 1698, on some apparitions in ye north of Scotland, in which we are informed that Mr. McKenney, A.M. Oxford, said that they saw apparitions almost every week, and upon his knowledge they did frequently foretell the death of persons, which always succeeded accordingly. Were all these mistaken? Were they under the influence of Herbert Spencer's organ of revisance, or wonder organ, which affords a tangible explanation of mental illusions? The Irish, like the ancient Jews, held that bad men, especially, could walk this earth after death, and the English law, almost to our day, allowed a stake to be driven through the body of suicides and murderers to prevent their spirit troubling the living. The Church has had its say in the matter. The Council of Elvira, AD 300, forbade the lighting of tapers in cemeteries, as that was apt to disturb the souls of saints. So said the Council of Iliberate. Saint Basil was told by a ghost that he had killed Julian. Both Ignatius and Ambrose were said to have appeared to their disciples. No church has ever denied the existence and appearance of ghosts, and none opposed exorcism in some form or other. Irish pagans, observes Nicholas O'Kearney, never dreamed of spirits after death, having assumed such forms, misty ghosts. The spirits of from Elysium always appeared in their proper shape and spoke and acted as if they were still in the enjoyment of mortal life. So this idea, this misty, white, smoky ghost, it probably wasn't a thing to the Celts. To them, they probably just, you're saying they just appeared as they did in living form. In this respect, he differs from Macpherson's Ossian. The opinion is, also, opposed to other descriptions in recognised Irish poems of antiquity. In the poem Cathluena, as translated in Ireland's Mirror, is this: Ferarma, bring me my shield and spear, bring me my sword, that stream of light. What means these two angry ghosts that fight in the air? The thin blood runs down their robes of mist, and their half-formed swords, like faint meteors, fall on sky-blue shields. Now they embrace like friends. The sweeping blast pipes through their airy limbs, they vanish. I do not like the sight, but I do not fear it. The Inverness Gaelic Society had a paper by Donald Ross on the subject saying, spectres hovered gloomily over the reedy marsh or the moor, or arrayed themselves on the blast of the wind, and pale ghosts, messengers of the unseen world, brought back the secrets of the grave. A Gaelic song has the following: in a blast comes cloudy death, and lays his grey head low. His ghost is rolled on the vapours of the fenny field. Henri Martin speaks of harps of bards, untouched, sound mournful over the hill. Some ghosts were material, though. That of St. Kiernan of Cluckmacnoise managed to strike King Phelim, the plunderer of his church, so effectually with his ghostly crozier as to give an internal wound, of which the chief died. When Finn or Fionn appeared to Osgar on the battlefield of Gabra, it is affirmed that his words were not murmurs of distant streams, but loud and clear. But the fetch, as recognised in the scattered poems collected or revised in Macpherson's Ossian, is more a spirit of the air. Some of the descriptions relating to the ghosts of Erin and Argyll are striking. She was like the new moon seen through the gathering mist, like a watery beam of feeble light, when the moon rushes sudden from between two clouds, and the midnight shower is on the heath. Clouds, the robes of ghosts, rolled their galled forms on the wind, with robes of light. Soon shall our cold, pale ghosts meet in a cloud, on Conna's eddying winds. Tell her that in a cloud I may meet the lovely maid of Toscar. Again, faint light gleams over the heath. The ghosts of Arden pass through and show their dim and distant forms. The misty Loda, the house of the spirits of men. Ghosts vanish like mists on the sunny hill. His soul came forth to his fathers, to their stormy isle. There they pursued boars of mist along the skirts of winds. I moved like the shadow of mist. The ghost of Krugal came from his cave. The stars dim twinkled through his form. His voice was like the sound of a distant stream. Of one, it is said, his eyes are like two decaying flames. Dark is the wound of his breast. Coggle, who appeared in dress and form as living but pale, is made by the poet to say, my ghost is on the native hills, but my corse is on the sands of Ulan. Thou shalt never talk with Coggal, nor find his lone steps on the heath. Like the darkened moon, he retired in the midst of the whistling blast. Of another, a cloud like the steed of the stranger supported his airy limbs. His robe is of the mist of Lano that brings death to the people. His sword is the green meteor, half extinguished. His face is without form or void. Some show their dark forms with chinky rocks. Others fled on every side and rolled their galled forms on the wind. One comforts himself, dying, with, my father shall meet me at the gates of their airy halls, tall, with robes of light, with mildly kindled eyes. A hero cried out, I never feared the ghosts of night. Small is their knowledge, weak their hands. A poet murmurs, I hear at times the ghosts of bards, and learn the pleasant song. Of a great warrior it is said, 1,000 ghosts are on the beams of his steel, the ghosts of those who are to fall by the king of resounding Morven. Or, let Carol, a bard, pour his songs, that the chiefs may rejoice in their mists. Of a beautiful woman it is written, she is fair as the ghosts of the hill when it moves in a sunbeam at noon over the silence of Morven. A ghost may warn of danger, foretell disaster, foresee death, communicate intelligence. Whatever may be thought of Macpherson's Ossian, there can be no doubt that all the poetical representations of Irish ghosts bear pagan and not Christian characteristics. The traditions coming through Christian centuries have a distinct pagan colouring. The ghosts of Christian times would seem to have left their Christianity in this life, becoming heathen on the other side. Other illustrations of Irish superstitions occur in the course of this work, though noted under various heads. The Irish were not more superstitious by nature than their neighbours, but, in changing less their abodes and retaining faith in the religion of their fathers, they have clung to old traditions more than those who were subject to greater transitions of place and ideas. After all, as some of these Irish superstitions are the heritage from the past in all lands, can the scientific mind afford to treat them as irrational and absurd? Is experience of all times and all nations utterly worthless? If the photographer's sensitive plate can see more than the human eye and exhibit stars which no telescope can show, are we so sure that nothing exists but what is revealed by our senses? May we not hinder our own mental vision by a studied resolution to reject what we cannot explain. Irish magic and Tuatha De Dananns. By far the most interesting of the peoples that formerly inhabited Ireland were the Tuaths, or the Tuatha De Dananns, or Dananns. There is much mystery about them in Irish traditions. They were men, gods, or fairies. They came, of course, from the east, calling in at Greece on the way, so as to increase their stock of magic and wisdom. Some trace them to the tribes of Dan and note Dedan in Ezekiel 25:13. Mrs. Wilkins identifies them with the Dedanim of Isa 21:13, a nomad yet semi-civilized people. Isaiah calls them travelling companies of Dedanim. The credulous four masters have wondrous tales of Tuath doings. In their invasion of Ireland, Tuath had to deal with the dark aborigines known as the Firbolgs and are said to have slain 100,000 at the Battle of Mag Ture Conga. Driven off the island by their foes, they travelled in the east, returning from their exile as finished magicians and genuine Druids. Mr. Gladstone in Juventus Mundi contends that Danaan is of Phoenician extraction, that a district near Tripoli of Syria is known as Dani. He adds, Pausanias says that the landing place of Danaos of the Argive coast was a temple of Poseidon, Genesios, of Phoenician origin. After reigning in Ireland 200 years, the Tuatha were, it is narrated, invaded by the children of Gael Glass, who had come from Egypt to Spain and sailed thence to Erin under Milesius, the leader of the Milesians. When their fleet was observed, the Danaans caused a druidic fog to arise, so that the land assumed the shape of a black pig, whence arose another name for Ireland, Innis na Iliuc, the Isle of the Pig. The Milesians, however, employed their enchantments in return and defeated the Tuatha at Tailtain, now Tailtown, on the Black Water, and at Drum Ligin, now Drumlin, Donegal. The Tuatha have been improperly confounded with the Danes. Others give them a German origin or a Nemedian one. Wilde describes them as a large and fair-complexioned, carrying long, bronze, leaf-shaped swords of a Graecian style, and he thinks them the builders of the so-called Danish forts, duns, or castles, but not of stone circles. It's funny because I came across a Danish fort. Was it just before Christmas? Or was it after Christmas? Around that time, though, but it was a Danish fort. McFirbis, 200 years ago, wrote, Everyone who is fair-haired, revengeful, large, and every plunderer, professional of musical and entertaining performances, who are adepts of druidical and magical arts, they are the descendants of the Tuatha De Danaans. The Danaans, O'Flanagan wrote in 1808, are said to have been well acquainted with Athens, and the memory of their kings, poets, and poetesses, or female philosophers of highest repute for wisdom and learning, is still preserved with a reverential regret in some of our old manuscripts of the best authority. Referring to these persons as kings Dagad, Agamon, and Dalboth, to Brig, daughter of Dagad, to Edina and Danana, he exclaimed, Such are the lights that burst through the glooms of ages. The Tuatha, G.W. Atkinson supposes, must be the highly intellectual race that imported into Ireland our oghams, round towers, architecture, metalwork, and above all, the exquisite art which has come down to us in our wonderful illuminated Irish manuscripts. The polished Tuatha were certainly contrasted with the rude Celts. Arthur Clive declares that civilization came in with an earlier race than the Celts and retired with their conquests by the latter. The bards and Shonekes, remarks R.J. Duffy, fancifully attributed to each of the Tuatha De Danann chiefs some particular art or department over which they held to him as preside, as abortak to music. The author of Old Celtic Romances writes, By the Milesians and their descendants they were regarded as gods, and ultimately, in the imagination of the people, they became what are now in Ireland called fairies. They conquered the Furbolgs, an Iberian or Belgic people, at the Battle of Moytura. There is a strong suspicion of their connection with the old idolatry. Their last king was Mac Green, which bears a verbal relation to the sun. The Reverend R. Smiddy assumes them descendants of Dia Teen Eon, the fire god or sun. In the Chronicles of Columba, we read of a priest who built in Tyrconnell a temple of great beauty and an altar of fine glass adorned with the representation of the sun and the moon. Under their king Dagda the Great, the sun god, and his wife, the goddess Boan, the Tuaths were once pursued by the river Boyne. This Dagda became the king of the fairies when his people were defeated by the warlike Milesians, and the Tuatha, as Professor Rees says, formed an invisible world of their own in hills and mounds. In the book of Balamote, Fintan, who lived before the flood, describing his adventures, said, "After then, the Tuatha Dé arrived, concealed in the dark clouds. I ate my food with them, though at such a remote period." Mrs. Bryant in Celtic Ireland observes, "Tradition assigns to the Tuatha generally an immortal life in the mists of the hills and beneath the seas. Thence they issue to mingle freely with the mortal sons of men, practising those individual arts in which they were great of yore, when they won Erin from Furbolgs by science, and when the Milesians won Erin from them by valour. That there really was a people whom legends of the Tuatha shadow forth is probable, but it is almost certain that all tales about them are poetical myths." Elsewhere, we note the Tuatha crosses with illustrations as that cross at Monasterbois of processions, doves, gods, snakes, etc. One Irish author, Valancy, has said, "The church festivals themselves in our Christian calendar are but the direct transfer from the Tuatha De Danann ritual. Their very names in Irish are identically the same as those by which they are distinguished by that earlier race. The writer assuredly did not regard the Tuatha as myths. Feach, St. Patrick's disciple, sang that Tuaths of Erin prophesied that new times of peace would come." And these people, the Tuaths, it just sounds like waves of different peoples coming into Ireland at different times. The Furbolgs, the Milesians, the Tuatha De Danann. They're not mystical. I think they're actually waves of different migrations of people, by the sounds of it. Tuatha De Danann magic. Magic, or Drodecta, was attributed to the Irish Tuatha and gave them the traditional reputation for wisdom. "Wise as the Tuatha De Dananns," observed A.G. Gogigan, is a saying that still can be heard in the highlands of Donegal, in the glens of Connaught, and on the seaboard of the southwest of Ireland. In Celtic Ireland, we read, "The Irish worshipped the seed." Or how was it? They worshipped the sleeve. Was it the sleeve? And the bards identified with the sleeve with the Tuath De Danann. The identity of the Tuath De Danann with the degenerate fairy of Christian times appears plainly in the fact that while seeds are the halls of Tuatha, the fairies are the people of the seed. Or is... Am I getting the wrong word here? Sleeve. What was I saying earlier? That might be a different word, actually, that he was correcting me on. I'm getting mixed up. And sometimes called the seed simply. The old Irish literature abounded with magic. Druidic spells were sometimes in this form. "I impose upon thee that thou mayst wander to and fro along a river," etc. In the chase, a hero found the lost golden ring of a maiden, but scarce to the shore the prize could bring, when by some blasting ban, ah, piteous tale, the fiend grew a withered grey old man. Of Cumhal's son the covert sought, what wizard Danann foe had wrought such piteous change, and Finn replied, "'Twas Gillen's daughter, me she bound, by a sacred spell to search the tide, till the ring she lost was found. Search and find her, she gave him a cup, feeble he drinks, the potion speeds through every joint and pore. To palsied age, fresh youth succeeds. Finn of the swift and slender steeds becomes himself once more." Druidic sleeps are frequently mentioned as, "or that small dwarf whose power could steep the Fenian host in death-like sleep." Kennedy's Fictions of the Irish Celts relates a number of magical tales. The Lianan might well be feared when we are told of the revenge one took upon a woman. Being safe from the eyes of the household, she muttered some words, and, drawing a druidic wand from under her mantle, she struck her with it and changed her into a most beautiful wolfhound. The Lianan reminds me of one of the classical incubi and succubi. Yet Kennedy admits that in the stories found among the native Irish, there is always evident more of the Christian element than among the Norse or German collections. The story about Fintan's adventures from the days of the flood to the coming of St. Patrick has been regarded as a pagan myth, says one, in keeping with the doctrine of transmigration. In the annals of Clackmacnoise, we hear of 7 magicians working against the breaker of an agreement. Brugga of the Boyne was a great De Danann magician. Jocelyn assures us that one prophesies the coming of St. Patrick a year before his arrival. Angus the Tuath had a mystic palace on the Boyne. The healing stone of St. Connell has been supposed to be a remnant of Tuath magic. It is shaped like a dumbbell and is still believed in by many. In spite of lectures of the learned O'Curry declaring the story to be nothing but the most vague and general assertions, Irish tradition supports the opinion of Pliny that, as to magic, there were those in the British Isles capable of instructing even the Persians themselves in these arts. But O'Curry admits that the European druidical system was but the offspring of the Eastern augurs, and the Tuaths came from the East. They wrote or reported charms, or as the Hoasjellers of Turkey still write nushas. Adder stones were used to repel evil spirits, not less to cure diseases. One writing in 1699 speaks of seeing a stone suspended from a neck of a child as a remedy of whooping cough. Monuments ascribed to the Tuatha are to be seen near the Boyne and at Drogheda, Knowth, etc. According to tradition, this people brought into Ireland the magic glaive from Gorias, the magic cauldron from Murias, the magic spear from Phineas, and the magic Lea Fail or talking coronation stone from Phalias, though the last is also said to have been introduced by the Milesians when they came with the Pharaoh's daughter. So this stone is the same stone apparently that's in Edinburgh Castle, where I live, this Stone of Destiny. Enthusiastic Freemasons believe the Tuatha were members of the mystic body, their supposed magic being but the superior learning they imported from the East. If not spiritualists in the modern sense of that term, they may have been skilled in hypnotism, inducing others to see or hear what their masters wished them to see or hear. When the Tuatha were contending with the Firbolgs, the Druids on both sides prepared to exercise their enchantments. Being a fair match in magical powers, the warriors concluded not to employ them at all, but have a fair fight between themselves. This is, however, but one of the tales of poetic chronicles of whom Kennedy's Irish fiction reports. The minstrels were plain, pious, and very ignorant Christians who believed in nothing worse than a little magic and witchcraft. It was surely a comfort to Christians that magic-working druids were often checkmated by saints. When St. Columba, in answer to an inquiry by Brocken, the magician, said he should be sailing away in 3 days, the other replied that he would not be able to do so, as a contrary wind and a dark mist should be raised to prevent the departure. Yet the Chaldee ventured forth in the teeth of the opposing breeze, sailing against it and the mist. In like manner, Druid often counteracted Druid. Thus, 3 Tuatha Druidices, Bod, Maca, and Morkegan, brought down darkness and showers of blood and fire upon Firbolgs at Tara for 3 days, until the spell was broken by the Firbolg magic bearers, Kisara, Gnathak, and Ignathak. Spells or charms were always uttered in verse or song. Another mode of bringing a curse was through the chewing of thumbs by enchantresses. Fal the Tuath made use of the Wheel of Light, which somehow got connected with Simon Magus by the bards, and which enabled the professor to ride through the air and perform other wonders. We hear also of a Sword of Light. That's another Lord of the Rings sort of reference. You know what I mean? The magic cauldron was known as the Brudens. Some of the Tuath Druids had special powers, as the gift of knowledge, and Fionn, a drink too, given from his hands, would heal any wound or cure any disease. Angus had the power of travelling on the winds of the cool east wind. Credne, the Tuatha smith, made a silver hand for Nudat, which was properly fitted on his wrist by Danecht. The Irish Esculapius. To complete the operation, Miak, son of Dianket, took the hand and infused feeling and motion in every joint and vein, as if it was a natural hand. It is right to observe, however, that according to Cormac's glossary, Dainkect meant the god of curing. Finn, as elsewhere said, acquired his special privilege by accidentally sucking his thumb after it had rested upon the mysterious salmon of knowledge. He thus acquired the power of divination. Whenever he desired to know any particular thing, he only had to suck his thumb, and the whole chain of circumstances would be present to his mind. The magic rod is well known to have been the means of transforming objects or persons. The children of Lear were changed by a magic wand into 4 swans that flew to Loch Derg for 300 years and subsequently removed to the Sea of Moyle between Erin and Alba. Transformation stories. Transformation stories are numerous in the ancient legends of Ireland. A specimen is given in the genealogy of Correa Lade, a hag, ugly and bald, uncouth and loathsome to behold, the subject of some previous transformation, seeks deliverance from her enchanted condition by someone marrying her. When she suddenly passed into another form, she assumed a form of wondrous beauty. Some enchanters assumed the appearance of giants. The Fenians of old dared not to hunt in a certain quarter from fear of one of these monsters. Cam has been thus described in the story of Dermid, whom neither weapons wounds, nor water drowns, nor great is his magic. He has but only one eye, in the fair middle of his back forehead, and there is a thick collar of iron round that giant's body, and when he is fated not to die until there be struck upon him 3 strokes of the iron club that he has, he sleeps in the top of a quicken tree by night, and he remains at its foot by day to watch it. The berries of that tree had the exhilarating quality of wine, and he who tastes them, though he were 100 years old, would renew the strength of 30 years. Sounds like a good tree, yeah? The berries. What kind of tree was that? A quicken tree. Quicken. Is that a quicken tree? The fate of the children of Tyrian in an Irish MS gave a curious narrative of Tuatha days and magic. It was published by the Society of the Preservation of the Irish Language. The sons had to pay heavy eric or damages on account of a murder. One failed and died of his wounds. Lugh got helped by Brian the Druid against the Fomorians, who were then cruelly oppressing the Tuaths, exacting an ounce of gold from each under penalty of cutting their noses off. Druidical spells were freely used by Lugh, the hero of the story. The Eric in question required 3 sons to procure the 3 apples from the garden of the Hesperides, the skin of the pig belonging to the king of Greece, which could cure diseases and wounds, 2 magic horses from the king of Sicily, 7 pigs from the king of the golden pillars, etc. Once on their adventures, Brian changed them with his wand into 3 hawks, and they might seize the apples. But the king's daughters, by magic, changed themselves into griffins and chased them away. Though the Druid, by superior power, then turned them into harmless swans. One son gained the pigskin as a reward for reciting a poem. A search for the island of Fiencair beneath the sea was a difficulty, but we are told Brian put on his water dress, securing a headdress of glass. He plunged into the water. He was a fortnight walking in the salt sea, seeking for the land, securing a headdress of glass. So you can imagine this bubble of glass going over his head as he deep sea dives. Were the ancients deep sea diving, looking for land? Lugh came into contact with fairy cavalcade from the land of promise. His adventures with Cian illustrated ideas of transformation. Cian, when pursued, saw a great herd of swine near him, and he struck himself with a druidical wand into the shape of one of the swine. Lugh was puzzled to know which was the druidical pig, but striking his 2 brothers with a wand, he turned them into 2 slender, fleet hounds that gave tongue ravenously upon the trail of the druidical pig, into which a spear was thrust. The pig cried out that he was Cian, and he wanted to return to his human shape, but the brothers completed their deed of blood. Not only the pig, but brown bulls and red cows figure in stories of Irish magic. We read of straw thrown into a man's face with the utterance of a charm, and the poor fellow suddenly gone mad. Prince Comgan was struck with a wand, and boils and ulcers came over him until he gradually sunk into a state of idiocy. A blind druid carried about him the secret of power and a straw placed in his shoe, which another sharp fellow managed to steal. Right, guys, so that's 2:30. I thought I was going to get this done, but it looks like there'll be one final part. And again, guys, No Mask, Ulick McGee, Epic, Tibar, how you doing? Good to see you, man. Sleeve. I'll need to remember that, sleeve. So we're going to have a wee look to see what we've got left to read. But like I said, I'm shattered. I'm up at 7 in the morning, and I'll get this finished for the weekend, and we're going to go on a wee adventure as well, a wee live stream. I'm just charging on my GoPros, on my charger packs, all that kind of stuff. So can't wait to get out there and see some nice stuff. Right, let's see. We're on illumination. Right. We've still got a fair wee bit left. What do you say? There might be another 2 videos. I might just do one big one. But you've got serpent face here. There's lots of them. Jam-packed as well. No jam-packed, but they're not the weirdest ones. Anyway, guys, thanks for everybody that came. And I'll see you in my next video. See you later.